Here again is another fantastic sonnet by John Keats. And he's reflecting here upon the nature of death itself. Not totally uncharacteristic of John Keats, who frequently brings up the idea of death and demise and ending soon in life. He had cause to do so. He had tuberculosis, basically, from the age of roughly around 16 or 17 years old, and was dying for most of his life. He ends up dying in his early 20s in Italy, where he's gone to try and get over the tuberculosis. It's a very bad disease. If you know anything about it, it's a type of bacteria that devours the lungs, and so one dies suffocating, really, and coughing up blood. And so he knows by the time he's in his late teens that he's a goner, because he's already beginning to deteriorate and cough up blood, and he sees only a few years left in his life. And for him, this is something of a tragedy, a horror, because of course he's going to die, but also because, as he suggests in the poem, I have so much more to write. I would like to write so much more, and I'm not going to get the chance to do so. And so in this sonnet, he's bringing up that issue. When I begin to reflect on the fact, as he says, that I'm going to die, when I have fears that I may cease to be, before I am able to write down everything, then it's depressing, right? And he compares this to the situation of not being able to get the harvest in fast enough, the harvest of his own thoughts and his own creativity. He's going to die before the high-piled books that he has yet to read or write hold all of the grain of his thought, the rich garners, the full ripened grain. When he also beholds that there is this high romance, this high beauty, that he's never going to live to see, or never going to live to experience. And third, when he realizes that he's never going to be able to see this woman that he loves again, because he's going to die, he calls her a fair creature of an hour because she too is mortal. When he reflects on these three things, that he's never going to get his ideas in, he's never going to really realize this great romance that he has a sense of, when he's never going to see the woman he loves again, then it feels as though he's standing on the shore of the wide world, like as though he's looking out over this vast sea of darkness. And he says, at that moment I stand alone there on that ocean. And then he says, I think. And this is where the poem takes on an almost ironic turn. Maybe the response to such a sense of sorrow and despair is not thought. And Keats seems to suggest this in other poems. Maybe the response is art, poetry, love, but not thought. Well, that's obviously a contradiction to the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment suggests that thought, human rational thought, was the answer to everything, and that we had to live by a rational control of life. John Keats seems to reject that idea. Ironically, of course, but he seems to reject that idea. He seems to suggest that in this moment of crisis, look, you can philosophize all you want, but I'm dying, Keats says, and I have 2-3 years left before I'm pushing up the daisies. And when I reflect on that, it's not thought that saves me. It's love, experience, poetry, that intense emotion and imaginative world. When I think, when I employ human intellect, love, fame, life itself sink to nothingness. In many ways, this poem is very much like Byron's poem, Darkness. Although Byron's is more magnificent, perhaps, and more regal, Byron and Keats are reflecting on the very same thing. And here Keats expresses it in a much more succinct way, and I think a much more immediate way, because everybody experiences this sort of sense. And he, nevertheless, is reflecting on that idea that if all this thought is supposed to save me, why is it then that all I'm left with when I think is nothing but darkness? Can thought and human intellect relieve that darkness? And Keats says, no, it can't. It can't relieve it at all.